Hey there, Sagittarius. How you doing? So this is the 2-week forecast, taking you from the 27th of April, the new moon in Taurus, and taking you all the way on a 2-week journey to the 12th of May, which is the full moon in Scorpio. Now, this is an interesting time, mostly, I think, because we've got some flipping great big aspects going on, like the Pluto and Mars opposition is exact on the day of the new moon. And then on the day of the full moon in Scorpio, we've got the full moon in opposition to Uranus. I mean, that is hot and spicy for sure. So this is quite, it's got an interesting start and an end point, but the midpoints between this particular forecast, I think, are actually quite helpful. I think they're giving us a chance to create something really new for ourselves. I really see that what's going on right now is we're rewriting or redesigning our life. I really think that it is a time to ask yourself, like, what would you be, or who would you be if you didn't have the labels? I think this Scorpio and Mars opposition has really almost scared us about our labels. It's kind of put us in a almost like a vice-like grip, and that grip is about to go. So I'm really excited about this. If this is the first time you've come here, then welcome. My name's Louisa Tanner Munson, and this is Feel Good Astrology. The whole purpose of the way I use astrology is to give you a sense that, yes, the planetary energy happens, but does it mean that if you don't follow the advice, it's all going to go wrong? I really don't like to use astrology to be fatalistic or to be punishing or punitive. The way I see astrology is it's here to be a guide by the side, and it can help you. It can help you make a little adjustment here and there, and it can also help you feel optimistic and not afraid of what's to come. So if you've been here before and you've come back, then welcome back. So pleased you chose to support the channel. But anyway, let's get cracking. Let's start to unravel the energy for the next 2 weeks. And the first thing that occurs to me, this is a waxing moon forecast. So the waxing moon forecast is all about the moon growing. I mean, obviously the moon's not growing. The moon is the same size throughout. But, with this, as we start this forecast, the new moon is a dark moon. It is completely unilluminated. What this means to me is we are blind. We are in a deeply intuitive phase. It's a very internalized process. It's a time when we don't have all the answers readily available, and we have to tune right into ourselves. So you'll see by the end of this process, we're at the full moon stage and it's fully illuminated. What this means to me is this is a very externalized thing where we can absolutely see what's around us, see all the opportunities. In fact, this is kind of like a clean slate. The new moon really shows us where we've got like a blank canvas. We've let go of a lot of things, and we're free to sow some new seeds and plant seeds of desire, plant things in the place, into our life that we would like to bring forwards into our world and into our existence. And the full moon really shows where things have manifested. Now, I'm not saying if you sow a seed at the time of the new moon that 2 weeks later it will be fully manifested. I don't think it works like that. But around the time of the full moon, I really think that we get the true cost of where our thoughts and energies have taken us. So this is, the waxing moon phase, which is a growth period. We can be sowing things that could be manifesting and feeling great around the time of the full moon, or if we're kind of swimming in negative thoughts and we're not really being mindful of how we're using our energy, we could have some quite chaotic things. And I think around the time of the full moon, it really gives you a clue as to how you're doing. Are you really creating the life the way you want it to be? I.e., it feels exciting around the time of the full moon. Yes, there's lots coming in. Might be a bit overwhelming, but you're buzzing. Or does it feel terrible? Does it feel like, really overwhelming, emotionally overwhelming? I think at those times it shows that at some point in this journey, you've made some decisions that aren't in alignment with who you are. So I really see that this 2-week period is about you getting back into alignment and to growing the energies that you really want to see come up into your world. And the first part of this, coming up to the first quarter, it's mainly in the dark, which means we are absolutely tuning in. We are needing to use our full intuition, a process of self-inquiry, journaling, meditation. We are not so outward. We are a lot more internalized. We're a lot more at home. And as such, I think we need to take it easy. We need to be really gentle with ourselves because we are our own tool. We are the person that we need to be listening to. So we need to really make sure we are kept in top condition. As we come into this second part of the forecast period, from the 4th of May, we're a lot more externalized. Clues and information are coming at us or towards us. And so we need to be able to receive information and be open to it, and then to be able to process it. So this is much easier, I think. And it's a lot faster. Things start to speed up as we go through this 2-week process. And as such, I think it's also important just to quickly see how this feeds into an actual diary. I find it quite helpful to see how it can be laid out. It looks, I'm able to sort of visualize it in my mind's eye. So, the new moon in Taurus starts on the 27th of April on a Sunday. The midpoint, halfway through from dark to light, that is on the 4th of May. And that really represents a choice point where we're needing to step it up a bit. And then the full moon in Scorpio, again, this is based on British times. I'm in the UK time zone. It appears to be happening on in the early hours of Monday, but you might find if you're in North America or Hawaii, for instance, that this is actually happening on the 11th. So just, you might need to check your own times. And I recommend timeanddate.com is a great place. If you go to the sun and moon tab, I think it's called, and then go to the moon cycles or moon phases, you'll see the actual time of the new moon and the full moon in your own unique time zone. So please feel free to use that. In between these two moons, and I think these are like emotional bookends at, at the ends of each of these this period of time. The new moon is pretty involved. You've got all the energy of new potential and this blank slate and this feeling of, right, I'm ready to start again. And at the same time, there is an ongoing opposition between Pluto and Mars. It's been going on. It's been coming in since the end of October. We had an exact opposition between the Pluto and Mars on the 3rd of November, then another exact one on the 3rd of January. And then we've got the last one going exact on the 27th of April. So this is the last one. After this point, thank goodness, Pluto and Mars are coming out of their opposition. However, even by the time of the full moon in Scorpio, they are still technically in opposition, but it's getting easier and easier and easier. So it's all starting to release and unravel, I think, from the new moon in Taurus. However, right at the end of this forecast period, the full moon itself is really quite spicy. The full moon is in opposition to the sun, which it always is, but it's in opposition to the sun in a conjunction with Uranus. Now, Uranus really makes things unpredictable. And the full moon, at the best of times, is a time of emotional, like when we're highly emotional, highly charged, highly triggerable. And so I think this particular full moon is going to be quite interesting. It has the possibility of it going completely out of control. And it just so happens that, we've got the full moon in Scorpio, the moon and the sun in fixed signs, and also Pluto and Mars are also in fixed signs still. So it's like we have these two oppositions in what looks like a grand cross. It's actually not in a cross, but it is still very, very fixed, and it's creating a really strong energy. And so what I'm going to do over the next short while is go through three different charts. Three different charts for the new moon in Taurus, the switch point midway through, and then the full moon in Scorpio. But like I said, these two big moons are like bookends, and in between, I think this is a time when we need to be quite soft with ourselves. I don't think we need to quest. I think we need to observe what's going on. I've looked at each of the signs from different perspectives. For instance, I record a relationship and connection forecast for each sign of the zodiac, and also a career and ambition forecast for each sign of the zodiac. And I've already recorded these. And, I can tell you, when I've deep dived into each of these, I really see that, in between these two moons, it feels like we're in this moment of deep change. It feels like we're formulating a new plan, but we're still internalizing things. So it's with that energy that I share this information with you. So in this 2-week period, the first one is really quite, I've only included the most important aspects as I see them. So the first thing is Venus is going into Aries, having been in Pisces for quite a while. And Venus is going into Aries on Wednesday, the 30th of April. Now, Venus isn't very strong in the sign of Aries. However, she's been in Pisces where she's exalted, but she's a little bit of a people pleaser, a little bit magical, and also not necessarily very clear. And so Venus coming into Aries, I think, is marking a time when we're coming back into emotional clarity and clarity in terms of our relationships. We're ready to take action a little bit more with the people we're relating to. And I think this is a good thing. I think the spring in particular with Venus and Mercury retrograde has marked a time when a lot of us have been in a state of confusion. It's given us a lot of time to really review how we feel in life and what's working, what's not working. However, I really see that Venus moving into Aries on the 30th of April as being a time when we're ready to move forwards a little bit. And, Venus is also coming into a conjunction with Neptune on Friday, the 2nd of May. Now, this is also really interesting to me because Venus has already made 2 conjunctions with Neptune this year. That's not normal. We normally have 1 conjunction each year. And for the last 13 years or so, Venus has made her conjunctions with Neptune in the sign of Pisces, which is very much like a fairy godmother kiss or, someone waving a magic wand. It's very magical. It's full of promise. It's full of imagination and like really sort of like pulling your highest dreams together and believing in rainbow colored unicorns. It's all sort of like magical and very much like a little 5-year-old girl's birthday party, but not necessarily about to take action. Now, Venus coming into a conjunction with Neptune on Friday the 2nd is going to be the first one that's occurring in the sign of Aries. So what I really think that this is a moment for us to wish big, but start to form a plan to make our wishes come true. Venus and Neptune is really about feeling the flow and creativity at a much higher level and being able to integrate it into our bodies. So I really think we can, anything we want to bring into a clear manifestation, anywhere we want to feel elevated and ethereal and celestial and feel really, really great that our life is really turning out in the way we want it to. Now we can start to build it as part of a plan. This Venus conjunct Neptune in Aries is asking us to take action. And if you're ready to take action, I think the necessary steps will all start to fall into place, in particular after the 4th of May. So I really think the 2nd of May is a time to hold the potential energy of this particular conjunction. I think it's exciting. Now, in week 2, there's some real building block energies. In particular, on the 5th of May, Mercury in an exact sextile with Jupiter is really showing that we can be a lot more friendly, a lot more collaborative. We can talk plainly and a lot. We can share a lot together. And so I think this is a really helpful energy, especially as we're coming into the more lightened times of the moon. The moon appears to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger in the night sky. We are more consciously aware of great things, great helpful collaborative things in our life. So friendships are really, really important. And then on the 6th of May, Venus is in a sextile to Pluto. Now this could be great if you're in a sexual relationship, a loving relationship as well. Things could get really deep and your trust in each other can really deepen. But, however you choose to use this energy, I think the ability to trust in the process and trust each other and go deeper into our collaborative lives, I think this is working beautifully. Now, on the next day, Mercury makes an exact conjunction with Chiron, and this could be quite ouchy if you're triggered and if you don't have great relationships with people, for sure. If there's no outlet for this could be quite difficult. But Mercury in a conjunction with Chiron in the sign of Aries is really showing this moment where we can be transparent, we can articulate what we've been feeling. And I think where our feelings really come up in such a way that we know what's going on. Like often, I think our hurts, particularly psychological wounding, I think it can be, we can separate it from ourselves. We talk about, when this happened to me, and it's almost like a badge of honor. And the moment we label it, we see it slightly outside of ourselves, like it's a thing. And when it's slightly outside of ourselves, it's really difficult to process things, So I really think with this Mercury conjunct Chiron energy, we are able to feel what's going on, to be able to talk about it, and for the potential of it to be processed. So if you add these three together, and remember, these are the days when these energies are exact. That's not to say to be fair, they're already in place pretty much throughout this whole 2-week period. But this is the fulcrum point of this. This is when they're really, really coming into play. So I think the 5th to the 7th of May in particular, it marks a time when we can come together as friends. We can feel things much more passionately and come into a deeper level of trust and truth, and also open up to the things we're vulnerable about. So this could represent a time of great change within relationships. Now, coming up to the 10th of May, Mercury moves into Taurus. And then I think the way we communicate is starting to get a lot more practical. And I think that's helpful, so we take some of the fire out of some of the communications that are going on. And maybe in the news, things won't be so inflammatory. Although who knows, I suspect they will. But Mercury into Taurus is really, I think we will be communicating from a place of practicality, with provable evidence, and in such a way where we're trying to work together rather than trying to piss each other off, which I think is a good thing. So that's how I think these 2 weeks, these are the things that really stand out. But before I go any further, and I will bring up the 3 charts I've selected in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to just say a big thank you to everybody that supports this channel. I really, really admire you, and I'm really glad that you're in my life. Thank you so much for this. People support the channel through buying me a coffee, or also, I've got a membership, Feel Good Astrology Community, where there are extra readings. I'll tell you about it a little bit at the end, but all the details are below in the description field. So if that sounds like something that might be interesting to you, to support the channel, to get extra readings, to get discounts and things like that, and also the chance to join us. There's a growing, lovely sort of team feeling there, then please do consider that. But anyway, let's have a look at these charts now. Okay, Sagittarius, let's have a look then at these 3 charts that I've already spoken about. The new moon in Taurus, we've got the first quarter moon phase, and lastly, we've got the full moon in Scorpio. Now, this full moon is in such a psychic place, and it's likely to bring up a certain amount of I don't want to say fear. I don't think it should necessarily bring up fear, but it could bring up a feeling of apprehension, a feeling of, oh, what's next? A feeling of your spidey senses are tingling somewhat, because anything going through this part of your chart can really, really affect you at deep and psychic levels. So this is what we're moving towards, this extra spike of sensitivity, this extra spike of intuition. It could be very, very helpful to you. But anyway, you'll notice that the energy here is between your 6th and your 12th house. If I go back to the new moon in Taurus, you'll see this is in the 6th house. The other 2 houses to really pay attention to, of course, are the ones where Pluto and Mars are in. So the 3rd house from your perspective, and the 9th house is also really important. So at the time of the new moon, the 3rd, the 6th, and the 9th are all really, really highlighted. And then as we come to the full moon, the 3rd, the 6th, the 9th, and the 12th are all highlighted. So these particular houses in your charts are really looking at what it feels like to be within your community versus the desire to get out into the real world and recognize what is out there. And also the feeling of how organized you are in your life, and how healthy you are, how fit you are, how well your work and your money are going, versus, i.e., what you're manifesting and what feels really physical and really real, versus the story of life and what's really not real. So I think there's this kind of interesting kind of perception between what you've grown up with and know to be real, and what you're trying to manifest based on what you know. versus this sense of adventure and this sense of a new perspective, and the realization that actually everything you thought was real is actually quite possibly not real. So there's a lot to do with the very real and finite parts of your chart, and then the really imaginary and not so final and physical parts of your chart. So, from a Sagittarius perspective, I actually think this is kind of normal. In fact, the Sagittarius is it is a centaur, half horse, half human. So they're used to being kind of heady and slightly rational, but also with the full intuition that the horse has. If you think of a horse, they are always going towards freedom. The horse will canter off and gallop off in the direction that they know that they're safe in. And then all of a sudden you get this sense that something has happened and their direction shifts. And that's a real sort of Sagittarius way of being. And, from your Sagittarius perspective, whether you're looking at this with your Sagittarius rising or your Sagittarius sun, I've got Sagittarius sun, this constant questioning and being ready to kind of shift and move is actually quite normal for you. So I don't think this is going to be such a difficult time. In fact, this new moon that we're starting on is really trying to get you set up in life, so obviously you're used to change and you're quite flexible. However, what probably leaves a lot to be desired is how you organize your life. Like, do you have helpful routines? Do you have a good health plan? How do you look after your health? Like how do you manage your money, and how do you manage your productivity? There are ways of being free and spontaneous, but sometimes when you're being too free and spontaneous, some of these safeguards or measures fall down the side of the sofa. And so this new moon in Taurus, I think Sagittarius is here to show you that it's okay to have some measures. It's okay to redesign your life and to be a bit more specific, to create some structures. I think if you're creating structures with a lot of thought and intuition as to what will work for your unique way of being, then those structures are much more likely to hold water and stay the course. What really occurs to me with Pluto coming into this part of your community space, I mean, Pluto here is really showing you where you might be a bit frightened of the community and frightened of the communal narrative and frightened of, where things are just really saying this is how it is and this is how it always is, versus this sense of, well, actually, I've been observing that lots of things can be true at the same time. And so I think anywhere where there's a community voice or just one way of being, it brings up a certain fear in you. Now, it's quite possible, because to be fair, most people organize their lives based around the kind of childhood they have had, and also the narrative they've grown up with, and also the sort of narrative pressures that come at us via social media, through the news, through everything. We are informed by what is going on around us. But the difficulty here, I think, is in breaking free from it and creating your life and creating your new routine that really fits the truth that you feel in your heart, but not necessarily what you see as the truth as transmitted from the outer world. Now, with Mars up here in the ninth house, there is also this real desire to keep learning and this real desire to kind of dive right into these new subjects, and to realize and to take action on your new spiritual beliefs, your new religious beliefs, political beliefs, whatever beliefs they are, your belief in finding your own way, your belief in having an adventure, your belief in your full sovereignty and taking complete choice and being able to move. So what occurs to me right now is this new moon where you're redesigning your life. You might want to put in some wriggle room so that you're able to go traveling or moving or going to another culture or go and live somewhere with a completely different language and still be able to work your life. So what I really see is you're building your life or redesigning your life based on some interesting truths about what would suit you the best. And actually, I think sticking to the tried and true and the tried and tested doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth for you. Whereas if you can design your life so it's got space for you to have choice and options to move, then I think you're going to be a lot more inspired. And I think you'll be able to stick to the new plans that you bring about for yourself. Now, this opposition between Pluto and Mars, it's easing off from the 27th. So by the time the new moon comes along, these guys have already come to their absolute opposition, and then they start to release straight away. So I do think that, Mars is the faster moving planet. You are going to be able to dive back into that deep inquiry that you've been really wanting to reach, and nothing's going to be holding you back. You're going to feel really quite free to move beyond that. Now, as you're coming into the time of the full moon, the moon by this point has come over to here, and this is a real place of imagination, but also a place of solitude. It's also a place where we don't necessarily feel that confident, but where we can drift off into a new kind of altered reality. So this full moon, I think, for you is reminding you that if you're building your life based on just what you see as being physical, and I'm banging my desk here, I mean, that sounds like it's pretty physical, and our reality is all sort of based around us. To me, it feels like, come the full moon, your knowledge and your feeling of experience, to me, it feels like you're in the very real world and also highly aware of the actual spiritual world, where there's no material and where everything is completely different, and you're really trying to navigate the two. And I think at the time of the full moon, there is the very strong contrast between living this physical life, but living it magically. And how can you do that? Now, I don't think you can necessarily remedy that by being out in the world and being really active. I actually think come the full moon, it's time to really step inside, go real deep inside yourself, and give yourself a moment to feel both spiritual and start to lose the stories that you've held on to. See, this new moon, and where Uranus is and has been for a long time, it has been encouraging you to create a new story about how you live your life. But ultimately, everything in our life is a story. And I think come the time of the full moon, you're really aware of how the story is dictating to you, and how awkward it feels. And that in itself can bring up some fears. And of course, the moon going through this can bring up fears. So yeah, it can be a bit of a perplexing time. But really what I want you to take from this, if you choose to, is that you're coming into a time of choice, and you're coming into a time where you realize you don't have to follow the same patterns that everyone else is following, especially, as everyone is or lots of people seem really charged with their political views and their religious views and their very physical views on what's going on with money and stuff. It can be quite depressing when you think, oh, this is all there is. I really see that for you, Sagittarius, at the moment, there's this deep yearning for something so much bigger than what is appearing at the very end of our nose. So I see that this, the story you're writing for yourself over this 2-week period is a whole rewriting of the script of your stories. It's really encouraging you to just drop them completely and start from the perspective of what would feel free, what would feel enlivening, what would feel worthy of a soul coming to earth. And if you can answer those questions, that may well be the new story that you're heading towards. So I hope that's helpful. Now, obviously, I can also read these charts from lots of different perspectives. This was much more of a general reading, but every time I do a new moon reading forecast or a full moon reading forecast, I also do extra readings. So I do a relationship and connections forecast every new moon and full moon, and also a career and ambition forecast every new moon and full moon. And if that's something of interest, if you'd like that deeper look for yourself, then you might be interested in joining my membership. I host it on School. So it's www.school.com/feelgoodastrology. You get 1 week's free trial. So at the very least, you can check in and get your free forecasts. But then, once you commit, it's $22 a month, and you can change that at any point. It's no problem. I'm not going to hold you in for any sort of minimum terms or anything like that. But if you have been thinking about having a consultation with me, like you'd like me to look at your individual chart and go as deep as you want, then as a member, you also get 20% discount, which can be quite significant. And when I run webinars or courses, again, there's discounts for that. And I'll let you know about them first. I'll give you priority access as part of the membership. Now, the forecasts and the discounts might just be what you want. You might not want anything else. But if you're somebody who also wants to make some friends, or even consider astrology from a group perspective, where we can look at our charts together and share in the process, then you might also like the community hangout that I do each month. I've just held one a few days ago, and in that we were looking at the patterns in our lives, the most important events that have happened to us and how they directly correlate into our chart. So trust me when I say I've run this session a few times, and when I look at people's charts, you really can see how astrology comes alive. So if all of this sounds like something that you might like, then just check out the links below. You can, all you have to do is click on the www.school.com/feelgoodastrology. It will take you straight there. So if that sounds like something that appeals to you, then please do. But aside from that, Sagittarius, just have a really fantastic 2 weeks period ahead. These are interesting times. You are rewriting a script in the most sort of imaginative way possible. I really believe that. So hopefully I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time for the next one, starting from the full moon in Scorpio. Have a good one and catch you all soon. Bye for now.